Today, I'll be speaking with John Davidson, a technology and strategy consultant who's delivered enormous value, mostly in financial services, but also in other industries as well. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Sam.
I was struck by the reviews on LinkedIn relating to your approach to tech project management, and it really hit me between the eyes that stakeholders are delighted, even bowled over in a good way, by very non-tech contributions to a project. So people skills, the soft skills. And I think a lot of people listening to this will be relatively early in their careers. And at that stage, I know I did, people tend to focus on the technical, which of course is absolutely critical. But to really add value to your organization or your clients or customers, there's a whole different world out there to embrace. So I'm actually noticing more and more often senior leaders in the tech space without a tech background, which tells us a lot about the skills needed. There are many situations that you'll find, just speaking to the listeners here, where you have a decision to make about how you handle it. And half the challenge is recognizing the situation. So we want to cover some of these to help open up your eyes maybe to some of those things that are happening that you're not really noticing, that there's something going on here that needs a certain amount of attention and you need to step in and do something a bit different. So, yeah, go John.
I was just going to say, look, I was very fortunate at the start of my career, was an operational role. I was in support for a business area, a non-IT business area. And it was very much understanding the impacts. So I think, as I say, I was fortunate that from the beginning, I was seeing the impacts to business separate to the technology, but caused by the technology. So it did give it that perspective where you can think in terms of what the non-technical people need to hear.
Right. Can you give an example? Was that in financial services?
That was in financial services. So look, at one point I was looking after the change for the business areas I looked after. That was finance and operation, tax, treasury, people like that. And you would go to the change meetings and you would hear the development teams talk about how critical it was that this went out at the weekend because of reasons. And you'd be like, do you know that you've got say triple witching this weekend, or it's like it's end of financial year, end of quarter, all these business processes. You'll have people working this weekend. They can't afford to have these key applications impacted. And the developers were thinking only in terms of, we've got to get this out because we've got a deadline so we can move on to our next thing. Whereas working with the business and speaking to them every day, you know what their key times are to perform non-technical tasks, but using technology.
Right.
So you're able to defend your business unit and then also give a better timeline, hopefully, for the future. They take note on the development side so they can work around that. And then you get that collaborative relationship from both sides, because the business know you're looking out for their interests and they don't have to jump up and down at the 11th hour saying, cancel this change. And the developers know that they don't get shouted at by everyone going, why did you plan this during one of our critical times? Right. So by being aware and speaking to everyone, you help everyone and you build that trust, and then it helps you deliver better in the long term for everyone.
That sounds amazing. So because you're in support, you're aware of basic things like end of financial year, end of quarter, and so on. And that's almost, that's the calendar that the business follows. Whereas developers don't live in that world, so they may not even be aware of something obvious like that.
It was surprising that they weren't more aware of it, but I guess that's why they needed people in between.
Yeah. And what about the deadline? So the developers had a deadline. Presumably they were working within the constraints of some project. So what kind of communications would be needed to adjust their deadlines? Because they may not have the power, or the decision may not be with them when the release happens. So someone would have had to get into their project hierarchy to update the schedule.
And that's it. And it's really all about the context. So it's like, well, this is a very simple example where you can say, look, they will be working this weekend on doing business processes that are regulatory required. So it's like you're not doing it. So that, that's a simple one. It's like, stop your project. It does not have the priority. But it really is about just giving context to everyone. It's like, because sometimes businesses, the business side does get overruled. If you've discovered a vulnerability as a tech team, it's like you have to patch that, because the other consequences can be far worse. And then even sometimes the changes to go, right, you can't work on this, it's expiry, and go, well, how about you guys don't start until 11 a.m. on Saturday? It's like the change is going to start at 7 a.m. should only take 2 hours, a 1 hour rollback, if that's required, and we'll be done by 10. You'll have notification in your inbox, and then you can start at 11. Will that work for you? And it's that negotiation. It's like, let's be honest, it's a Saturday morning, and the people who are going to be doing the work might not want to get up that early themselves. So there's, ruling something out entirely is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction as well. So it's about trying to find the compromise that gets everyone what they need. And it all comes down to just knowing your environment, and that's the people and the tech and the business. It's like, who do I need to speak to get this to happen? Who's the most reasonable person who can make the decision that's going to work in the way that we all can live with?
And I'm thinking back then that might have been quite early in your career, to now anyway. So if someone is in that role, support role, and they've got all the insights that you've described, they can see all this, they actually go about it, because they're probably thinking, who do I call? How do I actually make this happen? Am I senior enough? Do I talk to the business first, or the developers first, or the developer's boss, who I don't even know? How do they actually, and I think you mentioned knowing your environment. So I think should someone just get started, just talk to someone and say, who do I talk to, and get the ball rolling? Because I think this question of seniority might be a bit of a blocker, or at least a difficult thing to negotiate for someone relatively new in their career.
Yes. Look, first of all, speaking to other people, raising awareness of a risk. So you're never too junior to raise a risk. I think that's something people need to be aware of. If you see a risk, you need to raise it to someone. And you might be, they might tell you that's actually not a risk. You've misunderstood. That's the ideal situation, but it's more likely that it is a risk, and someone with more knowledge can make a call on whether you're going to progress or hold, or how you're going to work with that risk. But you're never too junior to raise a risk. Depending on what your role is, the first stop is, I would say, your manager. It's like, let them know you've seen this and get their input. If, as it so often happened to me, when I was at the change meeting, so this was where all the dev teams who were looking to make a change, dev and infrastructure teams who were looking to make a change in the upcoming period, and various support stakeholders representing the business would all be together. So you're hearing things. You have to be listening in, because again, the areas I were looking after would be counted as middle or back office, but a change to a front office system for, say, equities or fixed income. Same applications are being used by my business units, but they're not owned by that business unit, so people aren't thinking to notify us far enough in advance. They tell equities this is coming, but they don't tell back office. Right? So you might find out at the last minute, in which case then and there in the meeting is worth saying, is this going to impact the features used by your group? And you've checked it. Hopefully they've given a detailed change report, like what the times are in the back out, but just raise it there in the meeting when you hear it's like, look, this is going to impact my people, I believe. I need to check on this. So if equities, for example, are happy with this, it's probably okay, but I will get back to you by, or what time do you need me to get back to you with an answer for my business units? But I do understand that hesitance of, what's going to happen if I raise this? I think you always need to balance that with what happens if I don't raise this and it goes wrong. Yeah. And then they go, who was at the change meeting? And you have to say, it was me. And I didn't thing to do. If you didn't understand, that's bad. But if you did understand and didn't raise it, I mean, then you're part of the problem at that stage. So I'm not trying to put the frighteners on anyone, but it's like if you've been employed by the company, you're senior enough to raise risk.
Yeah, that's brilliant. If you've been employed, you're senior enough. Absolutely. Yeah, related to that is you have a lot of what I've noticed, and I sort of mentor some people in my spare time who are relatively early in their career, analysts, senior analysts, and they're actually managing projects. They're actually effectively, there might be a formal project manager or a product owner, but they're actually reaching out to the stakeholders. They're creating a schedule. They're circulating it for input, and they're actually holding people to it. It's like almost like a proxy project manager, because there's no funding to nominate somebody, to
yes.
And yeah, they roll up their sleeves. I mean, in my case, I would tell my mentee, well, this is a great opportunity, run with it. But I think there might be others who they don't have a mentor, or I mean, there are a lot of very proactive and entrepreneurial type of analysts out there as well. But if you can see there's something that's a bit like a project. It looks like a project, and there's no formal manager. You can actually step in and play that role, can't you? You're not going to annoy anybody. You can only delight people.
Well, that's it. It's like it needs managing. I mean, you'd be very lucky if everything happened on time and to budget and scope, just because everyone did what they were supposed to on time. Like that's a miracle situation. But people get conflicting requirements. So everyone might be really dedicated and really into it, and then something operational comes up and they have to drop it, and then it falls behind. But who knows that it's fallen behind?
Right.
Someone needs to be watching to see. And you go, oh, suddenly like the Linux ops guys had to spend some time patching another product. So they didn't finish the piece that was needed for this piece of work, which someone downstream then needs. And it's like, well, who's aware of this? So who's telling the stakeholders ultimately, we've got a little delay and here's why? It's like, there is, again, the worry about, like, if I stick my head above the parapet, am I the one getting shot?
Right.
And again, that is something you've got to be aware of. But if you then take on the role of managing it and, you see these problems, you should find out the exact consequences, the whys, and as people say, it's like, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. But here's the impact, here's the problem, here's the impact, here's a bunch of options, decide. And it's like, let them make the decision, but you've given them everything they need to know, and you've given them your favorite option, and you get your favorite option from speaking to all the people involved in the project.
Yeah.
Because you all know what's going to work best for you, and someone in a stakeholder position might not agree if you just give them the raw information. But if you can shape their direction, then it's something you've already agreed to that you can all work to. And then you're a hero. Hopefully you're seen as the hero. It's like you've made everyone happy, and everyone's aware. The worst thing is people not being aware. Right. If a stakeholder goes, it was supposed to be ready June 1st, and you go, yeah, there was a problem somewhere. Someone's going to get asked the question, why wasn't it done? So if no one's taken on that project management hat, you're all going to get it, and you're all part of the problem. Someone takes on that hat and tries to shuffle everything together. At least you're the contact person. You should be aware of everything, and you can give the best answer. But always be proactive with the information. If someone has to come to ask you for information, it's too late.
Right. Yeah. So communicating. So that's so clear. Someone's got to be watching, and someone's got to be talking or communicating. And if you've seen the need for someone to wear the project management hat, like developer, I develop dashboards, but I've also got a project management hat because no one else has done it, and I see these. Would you suggest that someone in that position goes and gets a PMI qualification, goes and actually get some kind of credential as well, or is that not necessary? These are just common sense things that you can do.
Depending on the size of the project, if you're putting on the additional hat, I don't think you need to go and get the qualification, because you're kind of muddling through to make things better. I am certainly not against qualifications. Well, yeah, I'm certainly not against qualifications, but the qualification isn't as important as the learnings to get the qualification. And I know it should be obvious, but I do want to make that distinction. Like, when you go on a course, what you hear on the course is more important than the certificate at the end.
Right.
You learn, methodologies, things to think about, like, oh, we should have a change register. You might, if you're putting on a hat early on in your career to do projects, people talk about risks and issues, decisions, things like that, but they don't always think about like logging the changes.
Right.
But then if someone comes to you at the end and goes, why did it overrun? It's like, well, here are the changes. It's a small thing, but it's an important one for covering your back. And it's covering your back sounds like a defensive move, but it's important to track how the project went. And if you're lucky enough to work somewhere where they do reviews afterwards, if you see the change log and you put that as part of your review process at the end, you can start to learn as an organization, why did we need to make so many changes? Was it just we were unfortunate that the situation changed around us, or had we not planned enough? And just having all of that documentation, having all those things that are important to projects highlighted to you through a course towards a qualification, it sticks with you. And you might not remember it day 10 after coming out, but then when you're doing a project and you suddenly think about something again, it comes back and it reinforces, and then it just becomes muscle memory as you're doing this work. It's like, what do I need to, if I'm going to run this as an ad hoc piece of project work, what is going to help me succeed? Because that's ultimately what you want to do. You want the project to succeed, and to do that, you need to succeed as a project manager. And yeah, keeping that control, keep thinking about what experts have determined are the important aspects to a project is good.
Changelog. So that could be Jira, could be Confluence, but you would also need to make sure that the right people are aware of it. You're keeping you're being diligent, something's being added to the scope, but it may be that the project sponsor, say, only finds out at the steer code, and that's on a cycle, and then it's, well, who agreed to this? So I suppose one also need, like this maybe senior analyst who's wearing a project manager hat has to make sure that the changelog has the right visibility, and just because it's on the changelog doesn't mean it's approved.
Well, it depends on your changelog. My changelog, I always list who was attending the discussion and who made the actual decision.
You write that in the changelog.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Call me paranoid, but it's like, it's someone's made the decision, or it could be the entire group has made the decision. Yeah. But being able to communicate, like, we made the decision based on the discussion in that meeting. Yeah. But I do agree. So like that's for retrospective communicating. If someone does come and ask you, yeah. But again, if a change is coming up, it's probably, the decision probably does need to be made outside, or maybe not made, but yeah, it does need discussed with the stakeholders, because ultimately the stakeholders, it's their product, right? We're delivering it, but it's their change, their product, however you want to call it. So I would almost see the discussion and the decision about whether we're going to make this change is the list of options and the preferred option refining process to then take to the stakeholders and say, look, this is what's happened. This is what we need to change. Here are the options for changing it, and here's our recommendation. So again, I do agree, you don't wait until Steerco unless it's coming up, but even then it's like, you can shoot a quick email and say, look, we need to have a discussion about it. Try and call them or send an email or or an instant message and say, look, we need to have a quick chat about something that is happening in the project, which is almost certainly going to need a change. I have some recommendations. Communication all the time. You don't want to be spamming your stakeholders, but you have to give them the right amount of communication. So like when things are ticking along, you can get away with, say, a weekly update, depending on the project, but a weekly update, giving some stats, risks, issues, changes. It's all very daily tasks. Daily activities can be listed once a week or once a quarter, or sorry, once a month.
Yeah.
And the bigger ones for Steerco. But look, to get the most out of Steerco, I'd rather they had been given the option of getting the information in advance, so we can make Steerco as quick as possible.
Right. Yeah.
But, it should be geared to really a quick update and any decisions. But if there's big changes, they should know in advance.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
One of the big things is knowing what is big enough. So that's where someone more junior might miss something, which is understandable. So this is where they need to, I guess, get some input from either someone more senior in the project or their line manager. Look, I'm wearing this project manager hat as well. I love it. It's a great opportunity, and I'm happy to continue. There are these small things that have happened. Naturally, so and so GM or EM doesn't need to know about these things, but this one looks more significant. What do you think? And then the manager will say, "You're dead right. It is significant. We do need to." That is not signed off until the EM has approved. So yeah, thanks for letting me know. So this is something that an analyst, senior analyst, has to always be thinking about. What are those exceptions that do need to be circulated before the next Steerco? Otherwise, it's not signed off until the Steerco has looked at it.
Exactly. It's like if you find you've got no one you can raise this to, then there is a problem, and you've got to raise someone. I mean, everyone has line manager. So if you find your line manager, look, I literally can make no decisions on this at any stage in the project, then the discussion you have with your line manager is, help me find someone who can make these decisions.
Yeah.
Because if you get stuck in a project where no one will make a decision, you're in serious trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And also, especially now when projects are often matrixed. So, I mean, even people who report to me, they don't report to me day to day. They're in other activities that I'm actually not directly involved in. And similarly to me, I'm on 2 projects that my manager's not directly involved in either. So, but your line manager can still give you guidance on how to find the right people in your project who would know. Another big thing relating to changes here is what has to be taken out, because even now, you want to do everything. Everything's a great idea and everything adds value. But the truth is that if something is being added or changed, often it means that something else has to go. And of course, we're good at adding things. We're not very good at taking things out. And everything that's there is critical. Often that's actually got to be part of the same conversation as well.
Well, that's it. Resources are limited. So, the whole project triangle of scope, budget, and time. But if you want to increase the scope, what else are we changing? It's like, are we delivering later? Or are we keeping the total scope the same by removing things? Or are you going to throw more money at it, give me more time? What else is going to happen here? I do think scope creep is most definitely a thing. To new project managers, you have to be very wary of it, because someone will just go, "Oh, while we're doing that, we could do this." It's like, that might be an absolutely amazing idea, which has a bigger positive impact for the organization day one. And in which case, have that discussion. It's like, look, here's an opportunity for us to deliver more. However, we do have to have a small increase in time or budget.
Yeah, that's
drop a feature.
While we've got the hood open, that's the phrase, which is true, because there are all these fixed costs to stand up the project, and once it's already running, then it's a relatively small incremental cost. But yes, point taken. So the conversation has to be had, and that's right. You can't do everything. So yeah, can we get more people? Can we get more time? I just want to also touch on the opposite problem, that the requirements are not bedded down. There isn't enough certainty about what the requirements are at all. The team's here, they're waiting. This can happen when you're in the middle of a project. So maybe a phase is being delivered and you're working on the next phase, but the requirements for the next phase aren't finalized as yet. And it's lots of discussions in the business, lots of different stakeholders have what they need, and there's a lot of negotiation and frankly probably politics in finalizing those requirements. Meantime, the developers are waiting. I mean, one thing that one can do is, and that I've done, is there are certain things are almost certainly going to be needed, and maybe that's going to be throwaway work, but at just taking that risk, at least you can get something done. So people are busy and they're actually delivering something that could be useful while you're waiting for the final signed off requirements. Yeah. At least you're getting something done. Some of it might be throwaway, but not all of it. Have you had scenarios like that? And what are your thoughts on that scenario?
Yes, I have. But it all depends. Yeah, what's going on before? Like you might have a bug list, and you just go, right, well, while we're waiting for decisions, we know bugs need fixed. Those 7 minor ones, that's our next sprint, and that's an ideal situation. Sometimes, whilst it's not progressing the product, I would take that period to just maybe work on a spike, get the team to investigate something, as you say, that you're pretty confident is going to happen.
Yeah.
So at least you can go into that, or maybe take a review period and just go, right, guys, what are our thoughts so far? We've been charging ahead. We've been developing in this way. Here's our architecture. It's like, particularly in agile style project, that you end up with this beast of everything bolted on. It's like, well, it was optimum at the time. Is it still optimum? Has this become tech debt, that we need to remediate? And you try and fill the time that way.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I like to do is, and it's a risk, but you go back to the manager and say, look, while we're waiting for if it's a decision that you're waiting for, while we're waiting for you, it's like the team isn't producing to the same rate. You've got your run rate for a sprint, and you go, right, so we're getting this many dollars worth of output in a normal sprint, because that's what was spent, and you balance it up, but you just go, well, why we've got a rather quiet sprint, you're not getting the same return on the investment for the team. And none of us want that. So to get your value for money, we need a decision for you.
Right.
And again, it doesn't have to be the final state decision. So is there something that you can give us today that we can at least include and be always moving forward? We always want to be moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So again, is there something you can give us that's a no regrets decision? And again, I always try and shape it, so as you said, there's the things you're almost certainly going to happen. I'll go back to my stakeholders and say, look, we're pretty confident in this one. Just give me a 2-line email to say you approve this one, and we will include that, and we'll be moving forward. It might be unrelated to the features you're working on, but it all moves it forward. So that's the easier situation, where you can go and suggest, if you're waiting for a decision, you can go and prompt. If it's just a lot of information to be gathered and that just takes time, that's definitely trickier. And again, it's about chipping away where you can to keep the team busy.
Yeah.
Trying to get value out of every minute.
Yeah.
I guess it really depends, but I guess, though, my takeaway from that, again, for reviewing, is like, okay, we ended up in this situation where we had a bit of fallow time. Why was that? What was it? Anything we could have planned for, or was it just it was going to happen and nothing could be avoided?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, why did we get into this situation? Another good one is documentation, because often that gets left behind. And if you had all the time in the world, there are so many other things you would have done in your documentation to make it just be for the next person who comes along. I guess that's always another thing that people can do. They can use the time for that as well. Not as a filler. I feel it is really adding value as well.
Look, I like documentation. I think it's very important. But what I struggle with is repetitive documentation. You know, like, what's the point in me telling you the same thing over 4 different documents in the same week? I do think that project management software needs to get to a better state where it's intuitive dashboard, so your stakeholders, if they're interested, can just go in and say, you know, project A, oh, here's everything I need, and they don't even, for the right reasons, need to contact the project manager. You've still got your regular inputs, but they can self-serve a lot, and then it also saves time for the project manager. I update in the system once, and no matter what document they want to see, it feeds in. So look, that's my little soapbox that I get on. So I shall not get on that for you today. I'll spare you. But yeah, look, you do need to document. As I said, like having a change log and what goes in that change log and decision logs, and your risks and issues. And you need to be reviewing your risks and issues as a PM regularly. It's like, you know, what was a medium risk today? Well, last week, you're a week later. Has that gone up? Is the proximity closer? Has something changed to put it up or down? It's you know, you do need to, as a PM, you need to live in certain documents,
right?
And understand what's going on. You know, it's, if you take your eye off that risk register, it suddenly could go to red all over the place.
So on the dashboards, so do you feel Jira hasn't really delivered on this, or it can deliver on it, but someone needs to make that Jira dashboard and to actually maintain the tickets?
I do like Jira for this. Better. Again, someone has to go in there, and you know, that might be something a PM will do for each project, or the delivery manager, project manager themselves. But that's giving more stats. I think a more comprehensive tool. So look, I'm mixing in actually Prince2 type things here. You know, when you set up a project, you've got your project initiation document, and you've got your this, that, and the other. And a lot of the wording, you know, if you follow a Prince project truly, is repetitive. It's the same data, and that doesn't progress anyone's understanding. It's just saying the same thing. You have that once. That could be on your magic dashboard that I want. Here are all our motivations. But what you need is the crux, right? You know, I think I need to be able to quickly see these were the changes, and you can follow that path. Or here were the decisions by whom and when, and what the context was. I don't need to send you this document or that document and another document, which starts off the same way. And again, I don't believe anyone really follows the Prince process to the letter for every project. I mean, you would have so much more you could do if you're if you don't do that. You could manage far more projects concurrently if you don't do the deep documentation that they give you as example. But as I was saying before about getting these qualifications, the learning, it's like these processes, they do teach you the kind of things you need to think about.
Right. Do you think AI is going to change this space of documentation, or not really? Because you still need to be, like you said earlier, you need to be watching to see, and that's what triggers the updates.
I do think it's got a place, as it does pretty much in everything for our AI overlords who are listening. It's transcribing is going to be a big part of it, and then sentiment analysis. But before I sign off, I don't want that going to my stakeholders without a human having reviewed it and go, is that really what we were saying? Is that what we think? I mean, AI will grow. It's not something you put in and today we've got AI to manage our projects and done. We do have to review it, and if it's one that you can teach it. No, actually, when we talk about this, the context is this, therefore it's different. But I do think AI summaries are a brilliant use of AI, and it will take the contents of meetings. It hopefully can then start looking at tickets and flow, and you get this feel for your progress. That would be my step one for AI, where it's the sentiment, and you review that. Step two would be predictability. So it depends how wide you want to go in this. It's you could bring things in that we've got a team of 8 developers and 2 BAs and 3 quality assurance people, and we have found out that when this person goes on vacation for a week, it impacts the work to this degree, and if this person goes, it only impacts to that degree. But if this combination is worse or better or something, and you'd be able to go, right, we know that John and Dan are both going on vacation in the second week of July. That's going to, according to what we've seen in the past, that's going to impact if they're working on an AI implementation and design. It tends to put us back this many sprint points across the sprint. So if we are going to do that, and we get a 10% increase in bugs when they're out together. So for this feature, it's best if we don't do it during the second week of July, because this is going to be our overall impact. Change it up. That would be where I think AI can come in.
Wow. Right. And the AI would know about the impact of these different team members going on leave because it's watching the Jira tickets that reflect the progress?
Well, at some point, again, you might, in this magic world I dream up, have it where you can put vacations into your ticket management system. Or it has an interface with your HRIS or your payroll system where your leave is managed, or it's more suitable. You've got an interface system that you've built in-house, so your HRIS talks to this, and your ticket management system talks to this, and it can feed the information in, and it reads that way. I mean, look, step one would be more it gets a sentiment of John hasn't picked up any tickets for this next period. He's almost certainly on vacation. But then it won't know how long for. It could be a day, it could be the whole sprint, could be 6 months. So, like long term, the greater the connectivity between systems, the more the AI can read in and gather that. Mm-hmm. The guesswork approach, I mean, again, it's giving suggestions. So that's where the PM or delivery manager or scrum master would say, actually, no, you've misunderstood this, but then you need a way to tweak it. So it's giving you the recommendations on what should be done, but you need to be able to go, okay, discount this piece of information and then see what it comes up with.
Yeah, and looking ahead with me, my career is something I'm still developing. That's one of the key roles of a manager, because if you haven't looked ahead, then it's very hard to turn the ship around, or to hire people quickly, or to move people from one project to another if you haven't seen this coming 6 months in advance. So yeah, I can see that will really, it'll give the right kinds of nudges to the project manager. But to actually track the progress of the project, or to know what's happening in the project or what's not happening, again, just back to my earlier question about is it using Jira, or how would the AI know that the project has slowed down? Maybe it's looking into GitHub at pull requests.
I mean, day one is, so using Jira as an example, if you get out your sprint reports and you've got your velocity and things like that,
right?
It's all about context, and again, this is where you most definitely need the humans involved still. But you could take it, and I would always advise building an AI if you can, but it reads it in and you go, right, this is what's happened, and the human needs to give context to all this, either to feed it in or when it's output to modify before reporting onwards. But I would use the sprint reports because it does give you the velocity, but then also you see like tickets started and not completed.
Right.
That's a thing that's it evens out over the averages of velocity, but it is. I always find it interesting, what we started, what did we think? It's in a project, it's as well, what are we thinking we're going to get done, and we didn't. It's like, what? How did we get our estimations wrong?
Right.
Or was there something else? But but overall, it's like, how did we get our estimations wrong? We thought, let's say we can do 80 points in a sprint, and we thought that this was 80 points worth that we put in, but we've only ended up doing 60.
Yeah.
Like, it could be that they're all about 3 hours off completion, so we only just missed it. Or it could be that we just completely misunderstood the scope of those tickets. Why is that?
Right.
So, even out the next sprint, probably, maybe, your velocities come down a bit, but it's, why are we missing it? So and again, that's where a PM has to be asking why. You don't just go, okay, we got everything done. It's like, well, okay, or we didn't get everything done, but again, why? Like, I don't want to just report to my stakeholders, we didn't get these features done, because their first question is going to be, why? So you have to know.
And it sounds like just a fundamental point you mentioned there is sprint points and progress, because I know that out there, use of sprint story points is patchy. In some teams they're religious about it. In some teams it's patchy. And so if we don't do that, we're really flying blind, aren't we, on the progress?
Yeah, like it is a bit patchy. You do need to use it. Like, you've got to use some sort of progress metric. You can do it by how many man hours you think it's going to be, or you can do it by sprint points. It's largely equivalent, though I do know that people don't like to equate sprint points with man hours, because there's a lot more goes on. But and it is hard as well when you're working between teams, because you go, well, my team, this is going to be that's going to be 8 points for my team. Right. But 8 points could be a 10th of a sprint, or it could be a 20th of a sprint, depending on what your team gets through.
Yeah.
So it's really not equivalent, even whenever you're working in like scrums and all. It's like, unless you've got one person go it, well, unless you've got a very consistent group of scrum teams who estimate in a very similar manner. Your story point doesn't equate to mine. So again, that's where PMs either working together or one across a bunch of scrums, is that they have to understand what it means for each person, and it's distinct to that scrum.
Right.
But you must have it. You must know, because then how else can you tell if you're on target? It's like, we think we're going to do this, we didn't make it. Well, okay, why didn't we make it? Oh, it's bigger than we thought. Well, how big did you think it was? Oh, we didn't have any thought at all. So, okay, we need to start thinking about how big it's going to be so that we can deliver it. It's like, whatever the size it was always going to be that size and take you that long to deliver. But we have told someone that a deliverable will be ready at the end of this sprint, and we were wrong. They might have been fine to wait another sprint for it, but they were told it was this sprint. So we need to be able to accurately tell our stakeholders when things are coming. And you have to put a metric on it. And it can be number of squirrels, or it can be story points, or it can be like, it will take us 4 hours to code and test this. But you've got to put some sort of metric so you know if you're achieving your goals in advance of the sprint end, as opposed to just like, we're done. And it's like, whenever I'm doing a stand-up, I like to know what the progress is. If I see a 3-point ticket, and again, I do acknowledge that story points are very subjective, but 3 is a smaller one. And if I see a 3 ticket that was picked up 4 days ago and is not complete, and there's nothing in the comments to say it's been sent back from QA, so, well, you started it, says it's in development, but here we are a couple of days later on a rather big ticket. Sorry, a rather small ticket. We've taken a rather big amount of time out of the sprint for it. Speak to me. Are you stuck on something? But you wouldn't know that if you've got no metric.
Exactly. And the idea of having a metric, if you're the kind of, I'm wearing a project manager hat because I can see that needs to be done, who in their updates has metrics, who can say percent complete, then in some organizations, you will stand head and shoulders above everybody else, because often without the metrics, all you can do is sort of give an airy-fairy sort of summary. And, what does that tell a GM? They want to know a percentage, because that actually means something to them. So yeah, that's great.
But also, at some point, you're going to, in some project or other, you're going to need more money. And if you go to someone and say, I need more money because we need to do more stuff, they're going to be like, well, when's it going to be done? Oh, wait, you never give me an accurate answer.
Right.
So it's like, you're asking me for money for some period. Also, how do you determine how much money based on the resources? So how long are you going to need those resources for? At some period. So you don't know how much really you're going to need.
Yeah.
So you're asking me for a blank check, and no one's going to sign off on that.
Yeah, and a lot of our work is complex and it is hard. It's hard to quantify it, but yeah, it's got to be done. And so this is all in the agile domain. There are a lot of projects where, including one that I'm in now, where there are big chunks of work that are dependent on prior chunks of work, which lends itself to waterfall. But what we're trying to do is make it agile. We want to be able to have as many people working in parallel as possible. Otherwise, they're twiddling their thumbs waiting for the prior stage to complete. Can't we deliver a smaller chunk so that the next stage can at least start working on their bit while you work on the next smaller chunk to deliver in a smaller amount? But that each chunk might affect the previous one as well. So it creates a risk of rework.
Yes.
Yeah, like we've got stage A, stage B. Stage A has delivered module 1 to stage B to work on. But while working on module 2 in stage A, they may find they've got to make some changes to module 1, which will affect the work that stage B have been doing on module 1, if all that makes sense. This is a fine balancing act, but it is important.
But that change was always going to need to happen.
Right.
It's like if they find it, to do module 2, they were always going to have to change module 1. The only way you could, and it still wouldn't always work, but the only way you could avoid that is if you spend a lot more time planning up front to make sure they properly understand module 2 before they start coding module 1.
Right.
And it's like, there is an argument for discovery. I'm big on discovery, and poor discovery is the cause of much rework and scope creep and time stretch. But again, it's like, well, if module 1 being ready delivers value, then it was worth doing it, even if there is rework by both teams on module 1 whenever module 2 is being worked on.
Right.
It's like, but if it's a case of you're all building your section and there's no value being done in the meantime, I would argue then it was wrong to pass on module 1 at that stage because they didn't properly understand it for module 2. So yeah, as you say, it is that fine balance, but I guess it depends really on dedicated resources. You want everyone to be working. If the team who are going to be working on module 1 afterwards are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, then it's better to get them working and do a little bit of rework, because that's ultimately better financially for your employer. Yeah,
it won't all be throwaway. Discovery, that's a big point. So when should discovery start, and when do you know you've done enough discovery? I know that's really high level, and just any general principles maybe, or maybe even examples.
Again, it's all on the type of project. For agile projects, it's like as soon as you know there's something you want to put in, start discovering on it. But discovery should be, by and large, in my ideal world, complete before a deadline is set.
Right.
And again, that can be on a small feature as opposed to the whole end-to-end product.
Yeah.
But if you set a deadline before you truly understand your scope, you're running a risk. And your scope is going to include what everything touches. It's not just like we want to put in this feature and we know you need to do this. Like, but what else needs to be done? What does that touch? You know, what are the interface systems? It's you've got to know what your environment is before you make changes, or you should know what your environment is, because otherwise you put it in and your system now does what you designed it to do. It breaks everything else, but you know you did it. But then because it's broken, you either have to roll it back so you still don't get your change, or you have to do emergency changes on it to make it work within your greater environment, which means then your next stage plan has to be delayed while you're doing ticks, and you've lost the confidence of the room,
Right?
because you just threw it in. I worked on a project. It's not an agile one like this, but I worked on a project where they were going to do an upgrade to 7,000 machines, except it wasn't 7,000 machines; it's 13,000.
Right.
You know, it's like you didn't know how many machines you had. You just knew that you knew of 7,000,
Right.
and you planned for 7,000, but you also knew at the back of your mind that couldn't possibly be the right number. But you didn't spend the time finding the rest.
Yeah.
You know, it's a risk, and I'm putting that mildly. It's a risk. It's an issue. But you know, like everything, your discovery has to be appropriate. Okay, that example had all sorts of impacts, because you've got almost double the amount of machines. So your delivery of software system, in this case, wasn't up to the throughput. So that then had to be remediated, and there were consequences all through the project because discovery hadn't been completed to a decent level.
Were you the one who had to deliver the message that we found another 8,000 machines?
Yeah,
Oh,
I was.
my gosh.
Yeah, it was a good day. Look, no, but I was brought in, as I often am, as a rescue project manager. The project just wasn't really going anywhere.
Right.
There was a comedy of errors, and this was just one part of it. And to be honest, this was one of the things was they weren't getting the software rolled out because the infrastructure rolled out was failing. And it was failing because it was actually a lot more greater in audience than they thought, but they didn't know that at the time. So look, at least I was able to give a good news story. It's like, look, this is, you know, well, we know there's mystery out there.
Right.
We're going to have to find it.
Yeah.
Here's what we can be doing in the meantime. You know, it's all about keeping the ball rolling. There are things we can be doing. This is, you know, there are going to be some people who are going to be sitting idle on this work because they have to, because of this discovery. But by and large, we will keep moving forward. We'll be able to tell you that, and we'll be able to give you a better, you know, view of your environment. And totally, I mean, there were lots of other benefits that came out of it. The PC health was broken. We fixed that. We found all the devices. We were able to get reporting in. We were finding out the machines had all sorts of dirty software on there, as in things that, you know, instead of wiping machine, before giving it to a new person, they just gave it to them and said, you log on here. So it had, like, you know, old software that division didn't use. And, you know, it just cleaned up the environment. So it was a win overall, but, you know, they could have had that win had they discovered everything in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm big on discovery. I had another situation with a product that was being end of life, going end of life, and they wanted to replace it, and they hadn't discovered what it spoke to in advance. They just like, well, we're going to replace this product. It's like, well, okay. Have you thought about all these other things? And they're like, oh, no, we're just changing our things. Yes, but it doesn't, you know, you don't install a CD on your computer anymore and you use that software. That's not how software works anymore. It's like everything seems to touch everything else. So, or, you know, you might be lucky and it doesn't, but you need to know that in order to give an accurate estimate of like time and money and the work involved.
Yeah, this thing about unknown unknowns and understanding your scope. I've been in a few projects where 6 months into it, we found a whole nother domain of work. There was one where we're migrating code, and we knew where most of the code was. There's another system that's connected that's also going to be decommissioned, and it also had code in it. And it was mentioned in some meetings 9 months prior, but it didn't get much attention. All the focus was on the main system.
Yeah.
Then this other code came up. What about that? Well, what?
Mhm.
What? And I thought we basically, I mean, the way I've taken that lesson on is just to, you really just have to listen to every detail and don't pass. It might have been mentioned in a meeting, and because it wasn't part of the main topic, it sort of just went in one ear and out the other. It didn't get captured. Yeah. I mean, my big thing lately has been about, well, probably the last 5 years has been about capturing stuff. So if you can at least get it onto a conference page now, even if it's not your main priority, but capture it, and then you can come back to it. Otherwise, it just gets lost, and that might end up being the same project all over again, just in that one item that you know about, or that you didn't give attention to when it came up.
But look, my first employer was the devil for detail, and I mean that as a compliment. And I'm very lucky that I was there, so that it reinforced to me the need for that. They knew their environment, right. And that just made things so much easier. Look, when you're saying about like the extra code and things like that, this is a game where I think AI will be a great addition in the future, because if you're using AI note takers in meetings, and it hears that piece of conversation, and then if it's got to feed into like a map of all of your infrastructure and all of your services, and it goes, that's there, and then Magic Land again, where I've dreamt this all up, it would see that this piece of code on this part of the cloud connects through to that piece which you're going to change. Therefore, have you thought about this? And it would prompt you. It's like, you're going to change system Z, but system B touches that, and I don't see that in your plan.
Right.
So as systems get more and more complicated, it becomes harder for the person to pick up on all these details. And again, I'm like you. It's I like to know everything that's going on, so I can see that and hopefully put two and two together and go, what about this? But it just gets harder and harder the more and more there's out there, and the more complex it is, and more distributed. So you need to have a proper inventory of your environment, which then eases discovery, because you just go, I can trace back what touches everything. So your discovery, if you take a proper inventory, each project's discovery becomes quicker.
Right. Then
you've got an AI that's analyzing it. It goes, you touch this thread and it vibrates over here. So be aware of that.
Your example of the 7,000 machines that was actually 15,000, that's a great example because it's so easy to understand. It's about physical machines. So there must be some kind of network scanning software out there that obviously they weren't using it before you came on board. And is that right? So that's essentially how you're able to find them.
Yeah, like and they didn't have a single source of truth. They had 4 sources of truth. So that was one of the ways we discovered that there was a problem. You just go, well, this machine appears on this list, but it doesn't appear on that list. Why? And then we dug in and we found out that it was an unhealthy machine, so it wasn't reporting back to SCCM.
Ah, right.
So then we remediated that. It pops up in SCCM. So you go, okay, what other machines are appearing on all this? And between the 4 lists, we got, I think, up to about 11,000. And then it was a case of, unfortunately, we don't trust this. So manually, walk about the floor, count your machines.
Right.
To all different groups around this was for APAC only. And it was a case of, we know of 11,000. Please don't tell us you see less.
Right.
But if you see more, we absolutely need to know them.
Right.
And then we'll give you, and it was a case of, we gave them a list of what we knew of, so they could go, that one's there, that one's not. So if they found other ones, they were like, okay, it's probably not healthy on these different systems, which is why it's not reporting into any of the 4 systems we have.
Right.
And then it was going back and forth, fixing up all these different systems that reported in, deciding upon a single source of truth, which is very important for inventories, which was SCCM, because we were going to be using that for many things, and it made the most sense. Every machine became healthy. Every machine was registering in. And then it was also, we put alert on if a machine stops reporting after for a period of time, we alert. We get an alert and then we send that on to your machine's gone. So it became an operational benefit as well.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So you've got to drag it out there, and nothing escapes your net. And if you've got any whiff that there's something that you're not capturing, you keep on until you've got absolute confidence that you've got everything.
Yeah, it's like I'm a big one for VLOOKUPs. It's like if I've got lists that should be the same, I back and forth lookups until I'm convinced they're the same, or what my discrepancies are. And I don't know if that falls strictly under project management. I would, for me, I think it's a key thing. You've got to know your environment. Again, it's part of your discovery. It's like, what am I trying to work on? If I've got lists that don't match, my immediate question is, why do they not match?
Right. Fantastic, John. Thanks so much. I think we'll end on that note. I think you've given a lot of insights and a lot of tools for our listeners to take back to the office today and start applying.
I hope it's all been clear. I do have an accent.
Thanks a lot, John.
Have a great day. Thanks, Dan.
You too. Talk to you soon. Bye.